So we got 10 people. That's probably enough to get started. So I'm going to if you if you just got here, use this questions that you want to answer. Do feel free to throw them in there. I'll try to get to them. I have a bunch of them here from my audience. So I'm gonna excuse me, get through them. So there's a lot. I have a parallel bus that has a compressor and a stereo widener that I send a lot of stuff to. But and that seems to open up the stereo image a lot. And then sometimes when you're panning, if you're panning the same instrument left and right, you're actually not creating any contrast between the left and right because it's the same instrument. But if you pan one instrument here and a completely different instrument to the left, then that creates two different anchor points, and it creates this perception of width that won't happen if both of your left and right channels are playing the exact same thing. However, it might some well to mono. All right, Mr. Street Lord asked the question. Uh, I have Yes, there is a secret sauce. We are not telling you, and I'm going to reveal it right now. And it's called parallel compression and parallel processing. I have a lot of parallel buses on. A lot of very, very big, famous, and more knowledgeable engineers use a lot of stereo processing when mixing, and it is your number one trick uh, to creating additional weight and power in your mixes. Parallel compression, parallel widening, parallel saturation, all sorts of stuff like that. Highly recommend it. Um, what else? Yeah, so that's that. All right. What's going on here? How to give each instrument a place in the mix and how to quickly find the right frequency for a particular instrument. Uh, I like to call this the seek. Well, the when you have a frequency, maybe if you have a track that uh, something sounds off with. I tend to use this sort of the seek and destroy sort of thing down in the EQ. You can do the same thing just with a broader boost, and you boost maybe a little bit too excessively, and you sweep around the frequency spectrum until it pops out of the mix, and maybe that's the frequency you want to accent, and then you just lower the boost to sort of a manageable level. But as long as it sounds good. If you're boosting 10 dB, that's fine. You don't have to be conservative. You can you can boost as much as you want, as long as as long as it sounds good, and as long as you uh, A/B test it with sort of or a level match the before and after, so that you know that it's actually going to actually sounding better. Um, Dodo asked, just started using a compressor for tracking. Do nice tracks because normalizing track basically makes the peak the loudest part and makes it hit, I think, zero. And there's no reason to do that in the mix. You um, just use compression and limiting and follow the standard processes of mixing, like I teach in step-by-step mixing and mixing with 5 plugins. Uh, I would just stay away from normalization altogether. All right. Next question. Mark asks, greetings. For performances at my church, I'm tasked with balancing the front of house instrument talent with amplifiers, who play with amplifiers, and front of house vocals with. So amplifiers are not mic'd up and vocals are mic'd up. It has an intimate room of 250 seats with a raised stage area. The instruments perform as a combo using separate instrument voicing for stage presence. The vocals are fed through the system. The vocal sound is superb. The stage instrument blend is superb. However, frequently there is a muddiness that occurs. We want to keep our distinctive instrument stereo sound, but improve performance. Then you can cut that out of the mains as well. All right. Question in the comments here. More of a recording question. That's fine. I don't do a lot of recording these days anymore. I do a lot of mixing and mix coaching work, but you know, I think I just emailed you back to ask for a picture. I wasn't entirely sure, so I'm going to assume that you are trying to record drums in a in a basement. I would, if it's super loud and super ringy and you get a lot of reflections, you might have a hard time recording drums uh, there that don't have a lot of weird resonant frequencies and things bouncing off the walls. However, if you but that said, Dave Grohl did record one of their later era albums in a garage. So that's, if Dave Grohl can record drums in a garage, you can do it in a basement. Just make sure that you follow sort of best practices for miking, and if you have any baffles or gobos or any absorption that you can put around to maybe dampen some of the sound. For um, so yeah, I'm actually talking with a uh, and including Cheryl Crow's "Soak Up the Sun," which I was super pumped about, pumped about. So he's gonna share a lot of recording drums in small spaces with me next week. But that's part of the Insiders community. All right, let's go to Hector here. Um, yeah, he's like, first off, thank you for an amazing skill and love you have for mixing. Oh, why, thank you. And being a passionate teacher. One question I have is, what should I work on or look at in order for my finished song to sound the same no matter what car speakers play through? Um, at mixfinisher.com, you can get my mix finisher formula, which is just my 7-step process to make your mixes translate. I mix in mono, then I check on my bigger speakers in stereo. Once I have a fairly good rough mix going, I also check the headphones. I bounce my mix out, listen on earbuds. I listen in mono on my mix cube, and I just basically test the mix all over the place so that I can make notes, different playback system. I even check my mixes on my Alexa Echo, sometimes just on my iPhone speaker. I'm not a hi-fi audiophile purist. I know that people are going to be listening to music that way, and it's my job to make that music sound as good as possible, even if they are shitty speakers. I mean, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue that the iPhone has quality speakers, but if your audience is going to be listening to music on those speakers, you might want to think about making your music sound good to them, good for them. Well, the biggest secret is a good band and a good song and a good performance. That makes our jobs a lot easier. Um, and so the secret maybe is in the pre-production or the production of the song and the songwriting rather than the engineering. Our job, we are pretty useless if we don't have a really good song. We can't make a hit record. There's no such thing as a hit mix. There's only a hit record and a hit song. Elliot asks, "Hey Bjorkman, a difficult area for aspiring mixer masters is the low end and how to get it right." Yeah, that's a very common question I get. Should the master bus have a high pass to roll off some energy below 40 hertz or 50 hertz? And when listening on studio monitors, the bass and kick can sound strong, but they don't translate to tiny speakers. Tips on working through that issue would be helpful. So a few sort of best practices. I usually high pass everything at 32 hertz, and then I sometimes do it higher on bass, maybe 40, 45 at the maximum, but usually I just leave it at 32 hertz. And then I high pass most other instruments. You have a powerful kick drum that's really juicy at 80 hertz. Then you can multiply 80 by a certain amount, and you might get blank. Go here. Okay. All right. And then one other thing, an insider student of mine, Constantine. Shout out to Constantine. He released his first uh, piece of music. He said he's been working in music for 30 years, and he released his first song in the last month or so. And I'm super pumped to be able to talk about him because he is such a talented saxophone player, arranger, producer. He makes sort of dub saxophone jazz. Very, very cool stuff. But what he does actually is he layers kick drum sounds so that certain samples will be heard clearly when the speakers get smaller. So you might have a really thick sub sample, but that's going to go away when you play it on a smaller speaker. But if you have a different sample that's maybe kind of hitting it harder in the low mids, that's going to come through better. Um, Isaac asks, honestly, how long to become a good sound engineer? I think it'll take your entire life if you decide to dedicate it yourself to it. Unfortunately, I've been doing it since 2006, and I'm still learning. And I still think that some of the stuff that I do um, could be better. And so it's really just practice and passion, ambition, motivation, dedication to the craft, and practice. And then also practice. All right. Ziani asks, do you compress before or after you EQ? Oh, this old chestnut. Let's cheers to the before or after EQ question. Or do you compress before or after EQ? I posted on Instagram. Unfortunately, it's all dependent on the song that you're working on and the sound that you're looking for. However, that's about as helpful advice as saying use your ears without saying how to or how to develop your ears. Use your ears as an empty statement that doesn't help you improve in any way. However, I usually EQ before, then compress, and then if the compressor is sort of pushing against those boosts, if I've been boosting in the EQ, then I may compensate with another EQ after the compressor. Alternatively, you can also do subtractive EQ only, and then you compress, and then you might add some boosts afterwards. Music. I'm finding that I'm really overwhelmed with trying to figure out which reverbs and compressors to use. It seems like there are so many options out there, and I've read a lot of information. I'm still trying to hang how you already have in whatever software you're using. Once you understand how those processors work and you can make decent sounding music and decent mixes with those stock plugins, then go out and see if there's a particular plugin that does something creative that you feel like is lacking. Or maybe there's a particular plugin that does a, has a flavor or a character that you really like the sound of, but you have to learn the process and learn the techniques of using just the general standard processors before you use any paid plugins. I use a lot of premium plugins, but honestly, most of them are EQs, reverbs, compressors, and delays. I use the omnichannel from Waves by Andrew Sheps, not necessarily because the compressor or the EQ is somehow way better than a stock EQ. It's because it's just a super versatile and great plug in the form of a couple of de-essing modules that are really great. So, and like I've said before, I try to make you understand how to mix using 5 plugins, which is EQ, whatever EQ, compression, whatever compressor, reverb, delay, and saturation. If you master those plugins, you can master anything else. You can figure out the rest. It's kind of like jazz. Break 'em. All right, back to oh, this is a good question here from Isaac again. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. How to recognize a good mix? I think that you can recognize a good mix whether by seeing whether it compares to a commercial mix that you like. So let's say there's a professional mix that is quote unquote popularly accepted, which means that it's a hit song or maybe won an award or is just generally accepted as a great song. Excuse me. This is the downside of drinking beer while being on camera is but if you can take that mix or those songs and use them as reference tracks and reference mixes, uh, and if you can emulate and make your mixes sound almost as good or as good as those, always a common one. What I tend to do is I create frequency pockets for the vocals, especially in the high mids. say I have a really dense guitar track. Maybe there's a bunch of guitars and they're all grouped to one guitar bus, but the vocals sort of sitting on top, or it's fighting with the guitars. What I do then is I make sort of a wide cut between eight to pocket that the vocal can then sit in without interfering with the rest of the guitars in in this instance. Um, and then just using depth, using small reverbs, using delays, and not trying to make it too loud. Because if you try to make a vocal too loud, it's going to sit on top, obviously, and then you're going to run into frequency balance issues when you find the right volume, but it's going to be clashing with everything else. So that's when that EQ pocket comes in handy. You can also do it with a sidechained multiband compressor, so that whenever the vocal comes in, uh, the that frequency area is being compressed down in the guitars or in the rhythm bed. So those are a few things that you can try out. All right. Max, if you're panning the same things hard, right, and left, then the same thing is over here and over here. But if you have a different thing over here, then it's going to create an anchor point where these two things will create each side of the mix, and in effect making it feel wider. And then as for practice tracks, um, Mike Senior has the best resource online for practicing mixing. The practice materials there are just the Cambridge multi-track library. All you need to do is Google. I use whatever reference tracks the artist likes. So sometimes all I'm trying to do is beat a mix, or I'm mixing for a client, but um, but and so but they like the sound of it. I don't want to pick the reference tracks, because I want to pick some I want them to give me something that they like the sound of, and then I can go from there. All right. And then I'm just gonna quickly finish. Well, we can stay on for a few more minutes, I think. All right, John Fisher says, "All right, here it is, the bottom line. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, audio engineer of my own independent content, working out of a bedroom studio. Congratulations and applause to you. I have zero experience with mixing rock music because I have undeveloped ears and I don't understand what I've done to set up every mix with success, like bypassing guitars at 50 hertz no matter what on all channels, things like that." So he's asking for hard and fast rules. And I'm actually going to post a link here. I'm going to find it real quick. Basically, it's the ultimate guide to starting your mix. Super helpful if you don't know where to start and don't know what to do. I'm just going to post it here in the comments. What I would recommend is learn to mix with 5 plugins, whether that is through my books or materials, or just by tweaking knobs and having fun. If you master EQ, compression, reverb, delay, and saturation, you're 80% of the way there, man. All right. Digital DAWs than in the old days when they cut records like the Beatles. I would guess that in those days, the mix was pretty much what you heard on the vinyl record. How has the process of mixing and mastering evolved in their functions relationship since the old vinyl days? Am I right to think that today's mix can be a good demo week, or of this happy hour, is Here, There, and Everywhere by Geoff Emerick, who was the engineer of the Beatles. Super awesome, incredible book. You'll learn a lot about engineering. There's going to be a lot of really fun Beatles stories in here. You'll learn he's just a really great storyteller. So anybody with any interest in the Beatles or audio engineering in general, highly recommend checking this book out. But it actually does outline a lot of how things used to be in the old days, and there were actual mastering engineers whose job was to make records louder. And Geoff Emerick's book is an insight into those days. Today, mastering and mixing and mastering, I feel like it's blurred a little bit, especially because there's less sort of corporatism involved. Back in the EMI days, people wore You wore a brown coat if you were a maintenance engineer, and you wore a white coat if you were a normal recording engineer. And now we all just wear black t-shirts and torn jeans and Converse. But uh, back in the days, it used to be more probably just limiting to increase the level, and then some EQ adjustments to get closer to references. Jeff Emmerich talks in the book a lot about how he was always trying to get the low end of the Motown records, and he was using the Motown records as a reference to get low end there. And he was talking about how one of the mastering engineers at Abbey Road, he adored and thought he did like the best low end processing. So obviously, it also has to do with the skills and the ears you have. But it's changed a little bit since then, because now we have more multi-band compression. We probably use a little more saturation, because uh, there was probably saturation going in because everything was tubes and tape back then. But we also have fancy digital processing like automatic EQ, stereo widening, and that sort of thing. But to answer just like that last part, are you right to think that today's mix can be a good demo that can be brought up to pro quality with digital mastering? It's hard to answer that. However, I'll try to. I'll say, at least say, if it's an exciting demo that really like knocks your socks off, then maybe all it needs is just punch and loudness. Maybe all it needs is just a little bit of EQ, some multiband compression, some limiting to get it punchy and loud. Uh, because as long as the excitement of the demo sounds like a good mix, then maybe, but I can't be sure. So I think that's it for now. We've been here 32 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you, as always, I never actually am able to finish a beer, which is probably a good thing, honestly. But let me know if you liked this on YouTube. I kind of feel like it's a good place to create some YouTube content and sort of engage with the YouTube audience as well. And everybody, both on Facebook and Instagram, I was streaming it on Facebook and Instagram at the same time. It was getting kind of difficult to keep track of comments, trying to be in two digital places at once. So I think everybody has YouTube, everybody's savvy to check YouTube out, and it seems to be more. It seems it's feels easier for me too. So I hope you like it here on YouTube. I'm gonna start creating more content here. And go to audioissues.com or to mixfinisher.com or mixfinisherformula.com. I can't remember which one it is. Whatever is in the description, go there and you can get my mix translation cheat sheet to help you make your mixes sound great on any speaker system. And then if you're an email subscriber, or if you're an email subscriber, you get a lot of really great free content. But if you are a customer, you also get access to some secret news and some live streams that I only do for customers. So check that out at audioissues.com. Super happy to get you. Super happy that you guys were here. I hope it was helpful, and feel free to email me with any. I'll put them in a document and try to answer them in future happy hours. All right. Thank you very much. It easy.